in touch on Rishi and number 10. Sue says, good morning, Rishi for Prime Minister, a definite no. He looks like a little wooden boy puppet, the ones with strings. Sorry to be mean, says Sue, but he doesn't look like Prime Minister material. I'll be honest, I think that is a bit mean, to be fair. I do think that's a bit mean. Steve says, we're now a banana republic and the Conservative Party is finished for decades. But Elizabeth says, Rishi as new PM, brilliant. Fair play to the Conservative Party, the first female leader, and now probably the first leader of Indian heritage. Good luck to him.
Keith, though, just about sums Boris up, he says. Returns from holiday to try to get support for the leadership bid. He's an MP in Parliament's in session. He should be at work. We were just talking about quiet quitting. He said, if I'd gone on holiday in term time when I was working as a teacher, I would have been sacked.
Yeah, I know a few prominent MPs who probably just got back from holidays. Of course, they call them business trips, don't they?
Shall we go through the papers? Unsurprisingly, two men make the front page of all of them. It's either Boris Johnson, who, according to the Metro, has bottled it, or the Daily Telegraph, Sunak. Is he going to be the next Prime Minister? Well, joining us to discuss all of this is editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson. And
Former editor,
and the political editor of the Sunday People and Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. A very good morning to both of you. Nigel, let's start with you then. Front page of the Telegraph, but we could have picked any this morning. Sunak likely to be the next Prime Minister. How do you think the day's going to go?
Oh, I think it's almost certain he'll be Prime Minister by the end of the day. The day's going to go is that the nominations close at 2 o'clock. So unless there's somebody in the wings out there who's actually been quietly ferreting away to put 100 names together, and there's still about 150 Tory MPs who've not actually declared, then it's almost a certainty, I think a certainty, that Rishi Sunak will be PM, and so we'll have a new PM by this afternoon, effectively, which means that Liz Truss will have to be packing her furniture and her suitcases to leave Downing Street probably tomorrow.
I told you so sort of attitude, isn't it? I mean, he can be confident enough to say, well, look, and if the membership actually are a bit unhappy about it, he can still say, well, look, this is what I said in all those 6 weeks of hustings. I said this was going to happen, and it did.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the one thing he did do was predict that if Liz Truss put together a mini budget like she did, the markets would go haywire and the pound would drop. I mean, in fairness, that Rishi Sunak did always predict that. I mean, the Boris Johnson rushing home from holiday and stuff, it was a bit of a pantomime. I'm not sure how serious he was about actually standing anyway. That I think he came home to test the water. If hundreds of MPs had said, oh, we must have you back, Boris, and if we'd ended up with Rishi and Penny at his feet saying, yes, Boris, you're the man to lead us, he'd have gone ahead. What he's actually done now is say, look, not my time, but he's still threatening to be back. In other words...
Threatened?
Well, I take
with the language. Dawn, looking at the eye. I mean, they talk about the remaining two candidates promising to get tough on immigration. I can't count Penny more than us. She's not actually going to make the ballot paper.
She's not. I mean, what's she got? 25, is it so far? She's not. And interestingly enough, a friend messaged me this morning. He had, over a week ago now, received a text from Tory MP saying, Rishi PM, Hunt Chancellor, Penny Foreign Secretary, a done deal. That was over a week ago. And it looks like where we're heading, doesn't it? But, I mean, yeah, the eye have gone on the immigration line as well, just to give it a different spin on what's happening. And it's top of the to-do list for both of the hopefuls, one of them slightly less hopeful than the other one would suggest. Rishi Sunak is putting immigration high on his agenda now. He made headlines this summer when he proposed ditching our accommodating asylum seekers in hotels, which is costing taxpayer millions and millions of pounds and causing an awful lot of angst, especially seeing as people are struggling to heat their own homes this winter and paying to put asylum seekers up in hotels. Rishi then suggested putting them on cruise ships, which was laughed out of because it's probably illegal. But he's talking a tough talk on it. Penny hasn't been quite so strong on it. She's concentrating more on the economy and housing and foreign policy. But she's also now suddenly developed a passion for it, and is saying that she will be tough on it as well. And they both are supporting the Rwanda policy. But I do think it's all a bit of a moot point as to what they say on immigration at the moment. I think it's a bit of a, as Nigel was saying, a bit of a done deal as to who's going to be our new Prime Minister. But it was interesting last week, because Nigel predicted this when we were working together yesterday. Nigel predicted, didn't you, that this would be the case and that Boris would pull out, as it were. And there's a joke in there, but I'm not doing it too early.
No.
Choke on your cornflakes. I promised I would. But you did predict it, and I must admit, I got the message last night when the news broke, and I go, oh my gosh. So it's, but as you say, it's on the front page of all the newspapers, and I think, as Nigel says, by the end of the day, we will have Rishi Sunak as a new Prime Minister.
Is he going to have the same personality and charisma needed to secure support from the whole party?
No, I don't think he will. I mean, this is the problem you faced. I mean, if you could have had some Frankenstein monster of Rishi, I know, it doesn't bear thinking about, of Rishi and Boris combined, where you've got the personality and the appeal to the public that Boris Johnson has, but the financial wherewithal of Rishi, then I think you would have been on a winner. But the two of them could never really work together that closely, could they? So,
do you need that sort of personality at the moment, Nigel? I mean,
Well,
isn't it about fiscal responsibility?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you want, as a Prime Minister, you want a bank manager, really, and somebody who's cautious, calm, effective, all the things that Liz Truss wasn't and Boris Johnson wouldn't have been if he'd been Prime Minister again. So it does seem to me that everything has shifted a bit to that kind of thing. Interestingly, if Rishi Sunak does take over, it'll be fascinating to watch how he deals with Keir Starmer. Both of them are very similar. Keir Starmer's very cautious, managerial, and so on. So I think that when the election finally comes, sooner the better, but when it does finally come, the question then will be over competence. It'll be who can actually manage us best.
Sooner the better. I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, the country at the moment is perfectly clear from every single opinion poll that people want a change.
Yeah, but isn't the problem with that, and I put that to both of you, and I put it to various Labour members of Parliament as well over the last few days. It's all well and good, but that doesn't do anything to help the country over the next couple of months, which is what it would take.
No, it'll be a snap election. You can get the whole thing over within 3 weeks.
That's still 3 weeks we haven't got, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I do think that you have to work on the basis that people have had enough of this government. They've kept making a mess of things, and the mini budget was kind of the final straw. If you think that Labour has a better plan to actually do it, then as we live in a democracy, we ought to be giving people a chance to make that decision. The only way of doing that is a general election. The only person who can call it is the next Prime Minister. So it's a fair play, really.
But, you know, in 2019, the Conservative Party won with a landslide victory. We elected the Conservative Party. They still have the mandate to govern. So why on earth would they call a general election? They don't need to.
Well, they won't,
They'd be
because they
turkeys
lose.
voting for Christmas, wouldn't they? And so it's actually not going to happen. But I agree with Stephen. I mean, you know, even if it's only 3 weeks for a snappy election, I mean, that takes us pretty much into December. Those heating bills are coming in, the mortgage has gone up. I mean, we're all struggling. I just want someone to lead us and to sort this mess out, rather than all this infighting.
Nigel, let's have a look at the Times, should we? And the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, issuing this warning over... there's these claims that Ukraine is using dirty bombs. Which,
this is the Russian claim. It's another sort of that we're supplying the materials. Us and the Americans are supplying the materials to Ukraine to make a dirty bomb. As a result of that, the Russians are yet again threatening to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. The risk of all this is being put as low, which helps a little bit, but I don't know why the Russians keep sort of going for this rhetoric, because any kind of nuclear weapon used in Ukraine would be a monstrous escalation of the situation at the moment. It would bring us one stage nearer to a possible nuclear war. And it seems to me that the one thing you ought to keep down, I mean, with the war going on, it's bad enough as it is, just keep the rhetoric down. Just keep those words down.
I mean, it just seems very... I mean, because even if that was the case, that they were using dirty bombs, they'd be using them within what they claim to still
Yeah, and
Ukraine.
I think the claim is they're using them, but they've got the materials and they're ready to use them.
But I mean, that would render parts of Ukraine uninhabitable for Ukrainians.
Yeah, it would be a mad thing for the Ukrainians to do, and obviously dangerous for the entire world if the Russians did it.
It's probably Putin just looking for an excuse, isn't he, to detonate his own dirty bomb somewhere.
Well, you do wonder.
Should we change tack somewhat and look ahead to, dare I say this word, this Christmas? People, families desperate for something to celebrate and also to be able to afford to celebrate properly, but it looks like this story in the Star, Dawn, may be more tricky to do that in the pub.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I went through the Daily Star because I wanted to find a feel-good story that wasn't politics, and
you failed.
I failed miserably. Even the Daily Star, which is put on earth to give you a bit of a laugh on a Monday morning. Christmas parties are in peril as many pubs even, and I haven't been drinking yet, pubs are forced to close over the festive period. Now they're not closing for good, they're going into hibernation so they don't have to pay the heating bills and the business rates, which all gone up, and their staff, more importantly. It's the staff you worry about. So, if you are booking a Christmas party already, make sure the pub is actually going to be open before you do so.
But isn't it going to be I mean, presumably, it's a time where they're generally taking more revenue over Christmas, isn't it?
But the heating bills and the business rates have gone up so much, Stephen. They can't even balance the books that way. I mean, this is the problem so many, not just pubs, but the hospitality industry has got, and it's like, but it's the staff working there you have to feel sorry for, because a lot of them are on sort of like very low wages in the first place and sort of like 0 hours contracts, and suddenly they're going to be laid off over the Christmas period as well when they've got bills to pay still. So it's really not good news, and it's Xmas is stuffed according to the Daily Star. So
well, that's a headline they have to use.
So it's all around yours then.
Or am I?
All right, for that Christmas party.
Bring it round. Bring your own booze, though. I'm not buying it. Rather drink it and bring it. Nigel, property prices in the Daily Mail. I don't know quite what to make of this. Property prices in the centre of cities are going up faster than those in the surrounding areas.
Yes, well,
apparently. I don't know if is that normal or not?
Well, at the moment there's a bit of a lag. So property prices are still going up based on what things were before mortgages suddenly went shooting through the roof. So what you're going to see is that property prices will start going down because people won't be buying homes or indeed selling them because of mortgages. But at the moment we've got a situation where they're going up more in cities, so 9.2% in cities, and less in rural areas, about 7.9%. Leeds seem to be booming, 13.6%. The argument is that a lot of people are going back to work after COVID. So a load of us went out and went for the rural dream. We all got our places. Yeah, we got our place in the country. Now bosses are insisting people get back to their desks, and so they need a home back in town. Let's see, an awful lot of people are still able to work flexibly, work a bit from home, bit from the office, which means that if you're travelling in from outside, you can always get into town, but you don't have to do it 5 days a week. You might do it 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah, but it's just, when you look at these figures, you just think, how on earth are anyone going to get on the housing ladder?
Yeah, well,
with probably, because I look at this and my initial reaction is, as someone who owns a house, you think, oh great, I'm making more money on all of this, it's all clocking up. But then you think, well, no one's wages, frankly, are going up by 9.2% or even 7.9%.
No, and you're talking about, house prices there are about 130,000 more. It's an awful lot of money to go and find. And of course, the worst people to suffer from this are first-time buyers. It's young people who really can't get on the property ladder.
Lots of people who can't work from home, nurses. There is a record shortage of them. Dawn, this is in The Guardian. We just mentioned it earlier in our sort of a roundup of the news. There's this new campaign, it happens every year, to try and recruit more people to say, I'll do that.
Yeah, this is a multimedia blitz, it's been described, to raise nursing's profile as a worthwhile career by featuring patients who've benefited from nurses' skills and dedication during their recovery from ill health. Well, that's what nurses do, obviously. And the bottom line is, there are 46,828 vacancies, which is the highest ever nursing vacancies in the NHS at the moment. And an estimated 40,000 nurses have left the NHS recently. Now, the problem with this story, as the Royal College of Nursing have pointed out, is it's all very well having this social media blitz and selling nursing as a marvellous career, and it is a marvellous career, it's incredibly fulfilling, but it's also incredibly poorly paid. And this is the problem you've got. It's like, rather than spending all this money on advertising what a great career is, why not start rewarding the people who are actually doing it, and they work incredibly hard on the front line? Stop charging them to park their cars at the hospitals they work at, and actually make it a rewarding job to do financially. Because it's not at the moment. And the NHS, yeah, you can argue the case of it needs reorganising, too much money, not enough money, etc., etc. But the bottom line is, when you've got managers in the NHS, diversity managers, diversity is a good thing, don't get me wrong, on sort of like 60,000, and the highest paid manager up to £400,000 a year.
Yeah.
And your average nurse is on 30,000. And many less than that if you're on the lowest pay grade.
I'm just looking at the bands 1 and 2, so when you're first sort of, actually up to like 6 years on band 1 and 2, under 22,000.
Well, this is the thing, Stephen. How can you survive, especially as we've just discovered with the property story? If you're working in a city hospital, you can't afford to live in that city. You can't afford to commute. You can't afford to park your car. All very well selling it to people. Come and be a nurse. It's a wonderful career. It is, but you can't afford to do it.
No, I know, but this is the problem. I mean, how much would it cost? It's more money throwing into the NHS. So the NHS is a bottomless pit, isn't it?
This is the problem. It's the 5th largest employer in the entire world. I mean,
You're just below Walmart, I think, isn't it now? The NHS.
Yeah, and the Chinese army.
That's right. Yes, and the Indian Railways.
Honestly, Scary, I just don't know what the answer is to this. I mean, I despair at the NHS at times, and I'm someone who, as a type 1 diabetic, who relies on the NHS, and I've got an amazing team that I go and see. But even so, when you look at the figures, you say, I don't know what to do. You can't suddenly start paying everybody more.
I do think you have to rethink the NHS a bit. I mean, we still work broadly on a model that was designed in 1948. Doesn't work in 2022.
There's I've got a small personal example, if I've got time, quickly, of the waste within the NHS at the moment. A member of the family is receiving treatment for cancer care, and they keep sending various... We ordered some supplies to be sent to them so they could sort of like do some stuff at home. And the NHS keep sending this particular item. And we've said, look, we don't need any more, we've got enough, thank you very much. Oh, that's fine, just get rid of it. No, we can bring it back, it's not touched, it's sterile.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why that's just one example, a tiny personal example of the waste in the NHS.
Just throwing money away, yeah. Look, we need to leave it there, you two. Thank you both very much indeed. We shall catch up with you, Nigel and Dawn, a little bit later on.